Hey beautiful people, I am Syntycheb, but you can call me Ty, and welcome to A Conversation with Ty. Today we're going to speak about something that I've been wanting to speak about for quite some time now. We're going to be talking about blackness and the isms. I got an amazing woman, my friend, who has been very vocal about this topic on social media, and I really want to hear what she has to say about it. You ready? You ready? Are you sure you're ready? Okay. Well, I got my tea. Let's get into it.
A conversation with Ty. Sorry, I have a tendency to randomly sit on my hair. Sorry. Okay.
It's okay, you're cute.
Thanks, you're beautiful.
So, hey again, everybody. This is my beautiful friend, Rooster.
Hi, guys.
And she is here to talk about what are you here to talk about?
Blackness and the isms.
Alright. So, Rooster, we're going to get right into it.
Okay, beautiful. Let's go.
Firstly, do you agree with the protests that have been happening in America and by extension, the world? Now, first of all, we know, some people may not necessarily agree with me, but I feel like America is in some way the capital of the world, right? Because we constantly try to follow in their footsteps, right? Do you agree with the protests that have been happening?
Yes, first of all, yes, I agree with the protests. I think they are making waves. I think it is something that is a cycle of history, but I think at the same time, while we would have seen protests resembling these done during Black Power movement and other multiple different protests that happened before Black Power movement got the acknowledgement and attention that it deserved, the protests that we see happening today is unlike what happened then, and that is a testimony of how those protests have been effective in allowing us to have more support to the protests that we see happening now. In saying that, I mean people are actually starting to pay attention, and the extent of which the protests developed into and the influences that they've had, I can see the change on social media. I can see the change on the different groups that are represented at these protests. I can see the different effects it has had in conversations with communities and community leaders. I've seen the conversations that are had amongst peer groups. And from those protests, I mean, today is July something. 14th. And this happened at the end of May. And yet the protests are still happening. And while to many it would appear as though things have fizzled out, it's just a matter of media is no longer as interested in telling that part of the story of the work that is being positively responded to, or the positive outcomes that have come out of the protests, because it no longer fuels the narrative of it being riots or it being Black people making noise. Since that narrative can no longer be sold, there's no more media attention to the protests happening. But I definitely agree that it is effective. I definitely agree that it is profound in the timing of which it has happened. And I definitely agree that transformation is happening in all of us, within the Black community, within the oppressors community, within other people of color groups, and looking in on the changes that are happening with us. They themselves now start wanting to also fight for their own changes. Because if it can happen to what is deemed and perceived and often conditioned to believe as the lesser race, then it could happen for them too. So things are happening and unfolding positively.
Beautiful. Okay, so right here in Trinidad and Tobago,
yes,
our sweet TNT.
Yes.
We have seen that marginalized communities such as, we know what recently happened here, right?
Of course.
With citizens that are from the Beatum and like Morva and the western part of Trinidad. Probably actually it trickled down to even south and the east. It went everywhere because people had something to say, right? Do you agree with what happened here?
Okay, yes, I agree with it, but mainly because I think what happened in America is not an American problem. What happened in America, because America is more or less like the anchor or captain spearheading a ship for the Western world, naturally what they do ends up influencing the way islanders do media, do fashion, do music. So it was only a matter of time before what was seen in the States was reflected here. But it's not a matter of piggybacking on America and bringing American problems to Trinidad. It was a matter of, while this global conversation is happening, here is a local conversation that also needs to happen that is of the same nature. And classism is very loud and very present in Trinidad and Tobago. Marginalized groups speaking out against police brutality, speaking out against the prejudice that exists in the way the system is built. If it wasn't, if Americans' protest wasn't the catalyst for these protests happening, something else would have been anyway. So I feel like their protest was inevitable, and I agree with it. Like, we have to pay attention to marginalized groups, and in conversations in school, in conversations in university, in conversations amongst friends, no one is paying attention and seeing what they deem, in quotation marks, the little man as an equal. There's always a we are us and they are them. Even within the Black community, there's a constant of othering of whomever is not in the same class group with us, or whoever is not of the same pigment of black as us, or whomever is deemed as who has looser curls and that featurism.
Y'all, I didn't even know that was a thing. Like, I mean, I knew it was a thing, but I didn't know it was a thing.
Right? It absolutely is.
I really didn't know it was a thing.
For those who don't know, featurism is when you get celebrated by companies, and they push you to be the spearhead and face of their brand as a colored person, but you actually have Eurocentric features. So you have the looser curls, the straight nose, the smaller lips, the lighter complexion, the pinned back ears, whatever looks more Euro.
I had them so big eyes, I guess. I don't know. Yeah.
Whatever seems more Euro friendly, that's what they will push as the face for their brand.
People were saying, or people have been saying that, okay, I am one who definitely was saying that I totally agree with what the Black people in these marginalized communities have been saying. And I understand and I stand with them for speaking out, because they need to speak out.
Yes.
They need to speak out. And I feel like this, as you rightfully said, this is the time. This is the moment to do that, because America has already stood, and so many people have stood with them, and you need numbers to revolutionize something. You need numbers. People, we all need to do it and do it together. We need to stand. Like, if we don't do it, it don't make no sense. If one person decides to do it by themselves, it can be done, but it will not be done in the time frame that we would like it to be done, which is now. You know?
And you can have lost opportunities as well. Apartheid wasn't solved by just South Africa.
Madness, of course.
The entire world spoke up against the apartheid.
And that's what we need.
And we need the entire world to speak up against police brutality, because police brutality isn't something that's only happening in America. You see it in the UK, you see it in France, you see it in anywhere that I have researched that has been historically xenophobic, is a place where police brutality is rampant. Like, those numbers are brushed under rugs, brushed under the carpet, so that other people don't care enough about it to make a fuss. And by make a fuss, I'm really just using that term because people actually see activism as you're making a big deal about nothing. When, truthfully, we are trying to change the course of history so that our own descendants don't go through the same cycle that we are.
It's like we need to break these cycles, people. Like, we have to break these cycles. It can't continue like this.
Correct.
Like, come on, what, 400 years? More than that?
More than 400 years.
Like,
more than 400
really
years.
Still to this day we're experiencing the same shit. Like, come
and
on.
the fact that you can chat with your parents and they can talk about their own protest experience. You can talk to your grandparents and talk about their own experiences. It's interesting as well when people say things like, especially from the white community, when they say things like, why am I paying for my forefathers' sins? And it's like, but it's not your forefather though. Like, this is now. Like, this is happening now. Like, this is your parents' era. This is your grandparents' era. This is your era. And if you are choosing to actively not do anything about it because you see it as a get over slavery, we still enslaved though, and you are still our oppressor. Like you are still operating like the slave master.
Tell me what you think about this statement, because I made this statement and I made it loosely. I just want to hear views on it, right? I stated on Instagram, an Instagram post, slavery never ended. We just thought it did. What do you think about that statement? Do you think it's a factual statement, or do you think?
Of course. I mean, systemic racism in itself is enslavement. We will always be pushed, not always, because obviously courses are changing, but we have been through the pattern of life, pushed at the bottom of the barrel to work harder, to do better, to be as close to the colonizer as possible, to be able to be seen as worthy of a battered eyelid. Like, even in the industry that I'm in now, I have seen, because this obviously ties in for me into colorism, and being fairer skinned or being reds as Trinidadians refer to me, or in the UK I was referred to as mulatto or light skin. And it's that idea of, because you are fairer, you are the bridge, like you aren't like them, and by like them they mean you aren't like the darker skinned people. I speak with standard English in inverted commas, so it's often perceived as me not being like really in that group, closer to the colonizer, and thus it was very easy for me to move between white pairs. However, in that, I can't help but think about house slaves, and I can't help but think about house slaves being the mulatto woman, house slaves being the dark-skinned woman who were constantly raped by white men to reproduce and have their mulatto daughter working in the great house. And I see it now. I still see that present today of, well, we can let you in as our black friend, but really you're the black friend that's closest to us.
So yeah, the token black girl, as they like to say.
Correct. Which obviously, to me, this just unfolds into, I don't like the term red woman.
Okay.
I don't like it.
Beautiful. Give me some things. I don't like the term red woman.
It gets me very heated. And it, to some people, it's a compliment.
Yeah.
But I never...
You're talking the thing, man, Rose. You're talking the thing. Okay, sorry.
But to me, it's always been something that makes me uncomfortable. Red woman being seen as something you want to aspire to have. And I can't see red woman as a compliment. What I do see with the term red woman is a responsibility. If someone says to me, hey, red woman, what you do for me is not what you think you are intending on doing. What you do for me in that moment, it reminds me, hey, with your fairer skin, you have an avenue to educate. And you have an avenue and a responsibility to make things easier for darker skinned women. There's a big difference in the treatment of darker skinned women and fairer skinned women. Right. For those who don't see it, no offense to you, but you're blind. And you are deliberately turning a blind eye to the privileges you do have.
Quick question. Have you seen that prejudice firsthand, be it in Trinidad or in London, because she's also lived in London? Have you seen it firsthand? Your privilege, if you want to call it that, of being the lighter skin in comparison to somebody of a darker skin tone, in an opportunity may be given in acting, because she's an actress as well, guys. Sorry, I didn't dig up, you know. But yes, have you seen that privilege? It doesn't have to be acting alone; it could be in anything.
1,000%. I've seen it both in Trinidad and I've seen it in the UK. And there's this thing that happens in the industry where they typecast you. When you typecast someone because of their color, you remove opportunity for those who are better suited to the role because of their own individual internal process and justice they would have given the role if you just removed color from it. Unless it is specific to the plots and the forwarding of the plots and it's linked to colorism or linked to racism, then fine, by all means do your thing. Or linked to history, then by all means do your thing. But in the UK, in life in general, I knew I had a lot of opportunities extended to me that my closest friends who were darker skinned did not. And it wasn't until sitting with them that I genuinely did not realize it was happening. Because obviously when you go away, in Trinidad we have a privilege where people of color are the majority of the population. When you go away, we are a minority group, and nothing feels more like a minority group than being dropped in your colonizer country and living in an area where only 2 blocks down the road, you could see another black person by chance. Like,
wow.
Everyone else is white. And by white, I don't mean Scandinavian alone. I don't mean Italian alone, because to them, they're dark skinned. Like, when people talk about
wow.
tall, dark, and handsome, they mean Italian look. Like, they mean Spanish look. And to me,
wow.
that is not it. If you, from Italy, Spain, France, my mindset is that you are white.
Right.
If you are still receiving the privileges of the white community and the oppressor, if you say to me then, Ruby, you don't have these opportunities, what you actually have is a way of being charming with other people. I won't call you out on the BS, because they have real charming people that are different ethnic backgrounds, and they are not nearly as represented in white peer groups. And I'll speak on that on Trinidadian white community, because having gone to the school that I did, I don't want to shine them up or put them on blast and get a lawsuit. The school that I did, I had a lot of white peers, but it was good enough to befriend in school. It was good enough to go out with parties. When I say it, I mean I was good enough to go out with in parties, but I'd never be invited to a weekend down the islands, or a weekend sleepover with the girls, or barbecues, because Ruby was the black friend who was also the very aware and vocal black friend, which caused a disruption in that comfort of white supremacy. I've had these conversations recently with the same people, and it's easy to also see that there's a large class divide, and that racism also has a deep root in classism. And that idea of, well, why should we care, why should we talk about it, why are you bringing that up here, why are you trying to cause a scene? And it's like, if you aren't comfortable with your friends having these conversations with you, you are never going to be open to having the conversation at all. Nobody's coming to you, nobody's trying to attack you, nobody's trying to fight with you. What gets us upset, however, is when you choose not to listen. It's when you choose to remain ignorant. It's when you choose to ignore the obvious things that are happening because you're so happy in your comfortable bubble that it's better and easier to just turn a blind eye. That's where the anger comes on, because you have that privilege to turn a blind eye. As a black person, the moment you wake up, you are aware that you are black. The moment you step out your house, you are aware and reminded constantly that you are black and that you are at a disadvantage in the society you live in because you are black, because the system is built against you constantly. You always have to watch what you wear, what you say, how your hair look, what colors you wear, what message you give off by body language. If your bottom too big, if your bottom too small,
the lipstick you're wearing.
Come on. And it's you will never. I was chatting with someone recently, and she said to me, Ruby, I would really love to know just for an hour what it would be like to be a white male.
Whoa, okay. Wow,
What would it be to be a white male in the world we live in today, where you have all the power, all the privileges, and yet could still find something to complain about? And then she said the reverse of that and I don't like the word reverse, I changed that, because reverse means directly opposite, and we're not. We are equal, we're human beings, we're equal, but the system doesn't build that way. So when I say reverse, even though I don't like that word, I mean here's the top based on the pyramid that they have built, and black people, if you look at the caste system, if you look at the white community, the darker skinned you are in the Indian community, Chinese community, Asian, any community, you are put at the bottom of that pyramid. So when I say reverse, that's what I mean. But she asked the reverse of, I wonder what it would be like to wake up as a dark-skinned woman and what that world would look like.
Oh boy, wow.
And how that will contrast being a white male.
Man. Right.
And I couldn't answer because I don't know either.
Right.
I don't know what it's like, obviously, to be a white male, but I also don't know what it's like to live as a dark-skinned black woman.
Right.
All I have are the stories that I'm told by friends, and all I have, which is the responsibility of everyone, is to allow these conversations to happen so that I can stay educated, that I can stay having these conversations, that we can talk about change in a way that is productive. We're not trying to bully anybody to change your mind. Quite frankly, we will leave you right there, and while the world is changing and growing, you will be left behind, and you will be left with that thought of, oh well, nobody didn't tell me. Nobody had to tell you, because the information is there, the conversations are trying to happen, the documentaries are there, the text is online. Like, come on, do better. Not knowing is not an excuse anymore. It's not good enough anymore.
Right, because that's something I was really saying before. I was saying there are so many people that are not even aware. Some people genuinely have never been exposed to black people or black culture. It's mind blowing.
It is wild.
And I'm like, yo, this is actually real in the 21st century, 2020. Some people have never been around a black person. Like, wow.
1,000%.
You know, and me saying that, I would also say that some people who, I'm not saying racism is right in any way, but that's what these people are taught. And they don't know any better. They've never been around, they've never socialized with anybody of color, and from birth, they've been told that black people are maybe the devil. Who knows, right? And how do we now help these people understand? Actually, I will agree with you on that, because I don't even feel like we need to tell them. We don't need to help them understand that, because now, like especially now, like what has been happening in America, the revolution that has been happening around the world, like you're seeing it for yourself, and you're still adamantly saying that white privilege is not a thing. Like really?
Or even piggybacking off of that, just two things I want to point out that you said that I was like, yes, that idea of people distancing themselves from the reality of what's happening because of their upbringings and because they've never been around people of color or black people or the black community on a whole. Even in media, they would not have seen black people. Like, I don't think Caribbean people understand the rarity of seeing a person of color on TV. Like, how hard that struggle was to get people of color on TV, get them in movies, get them out of the category of people saying, oh, it's black comedy, oh, it's a black drama film, oh, it's a black show. Like, there was even a tone that was said with it where you know they're being racist of oh, that's a black thing, that's a y'all thing, you know? And just seeing a movie that has a predominantly black cast as a movie, or seeing a series of a predominantly black cast, again, black writer, black producer, as just a series, and taking it for what it is and enjoying it. It also leads into these conversations about the representation of the black woman and the depiction of the black woman, and you know, you have to be the angry black woman. If you're not the angry black woman, you have to be the token black best friend. If you're not the token black best friend, you have to be the slave, or you have to be the mother figure,
or the battered woman.
You know what I mean? Why can't I just be a beautiful, successful,
strong,
intelligent black woman?
Yeah.
What is the example that the art sets now for young black children growing up to look at it? So when I see white people say things like, I just wasn't around black people. I see white people say, you know, I just wasn't around black people growing up, so I just didn't know black people existed. I start talking to them about their fashion. I start talking to them about the music they listen to. I start talking to them about, you know, the designs of the appliances they'll have in their house. Because, hey, most of the fashion that we have now is influenced by the black community.
Yes,
the music that we listen to,
oh my goodness,
hip-hop, R&B,
jazz,
pop,
blues, come on.
K-pop is from the black community, like reggae, like, come on. you have no excuse. So
yep, definitely.
I don't empathize with those who say, well, I didn't know it was this bad. It has been this bad. You're just now ready to listen.
But even if we take it a step further than that and say, okay, you didn't know, right? Because I empathize with some of the people that don't know, have not been taught or have not been exposed to, black culture. Okay, no problem, cool. But if now, in the 21st century, today's the 14th of July 2020, right?
Correct. As long as
2020 people, right? And you see a black person being, and you're a white person, you see a black person, somebody of color.
Yes.
And you look at that person as though they're shit because of the color of their skin, knowing fully well that this person is a human being and they bleed the same color blood you do. And they have the same type of organs, they just look a little different. And you could tell me that you don't like this person, you will not give them the same opportunities as you have been given or you will be given because they're black or because you've been taught to not do so. Then I have a problem because you can see, okay, again, I know that, it's hard to, break those social constructs. That's cool, right? Cool. But this is where the black community comes in. This is where we need to educate people. Like, we need to say something. Now, if we've said something to you, and you still take it upon yourself to not listen, then we have a problem.
Correct.
Then we're going to have a problem.
Correct.
Right? But you can't tell me, apart from that, you can't tell me that you're seeing a person, a human being, man, like a human being, and, like, wishing them dead. Like, why? Why? Like, do you wish a dog dead? Like you love dogs. I know you do.
You love dogs.
Right? You love dogs, you love kittens, you love lions as well. Yeah, like what?
I'm missing where they connect.
Don't understand.
Make sense.
Please.
Also, piggybacking off of that, black people, okay, depending on where your climate is, you will naturally adjust to your environment.
Of course.
Dark-skinned people in the tropical zone globally will naturally be more melanated than somebody from Alaska.
Definitely.
What's the difference between you and I? I'm closer to the sun, and I've been able to be conditioned and built to work in the environment that I'm born in with the sun, with the land that I have to work with people say you're big boned, but really you're built for the climate that you're born. People say Caribbean people are short, but if you look at our lands, if you look at our hills, if you look at our mountains, if you look at our agriculture, we don't need to be skyrocketing. Like, for real, like, we good. Like, we are built for our condition, we are built for our environment.
Just like you have been built for your environment.
Exactly. First, and people talk a lot about, like, we need to fix our problem. Like, this is a black problem. Racism is not a black problem. Racism is a white problem that the black community is oppressed and gets the negative result of. Racism is a white people thing. Oh, you need to sort out all yourselves. You need to sort out your friend.
Like,
talk to your friend.
Talk to your friend, please. Yeah.
What's happening now isn't a black problem. We don't have a problem with what you've done to us. Like,
and
make it make sense.
And I don't know if it's how we're conditioned as well as black people. Like, I feel, no, I know there are definitely black racist people. We know that. I mean, there are racist people in every race, every community. We know that. Like, all over. But, like, I feel like a lot of black people are conditioned to just love people.
Yes.
To, like, really just be open to people after experiencing all the shit that we've been experiencing for years, right? No matter what part of the world that we've gone to, we still, like, I saw a video on Instagram, and I mean, I could have related. I understood what the woman was saying, no, don't take this, and don't take it out. But she was saying that, like, we should be happy, that white people should be happy that black people want equality and not revenge. And I was like,
Correct.
And that's the truth.
Correct.
But all we want is equality, and that's the truth, because, come on, like we're people. We're human beings. Like, we really, like, and we shouldn't have to flash all of our what do you call these accomplishments, or what do you call it,
our
accolades. We don't have to flash all those beautiful things, you know, like what again? What do we flash? We flash our accolades, we flash jobs, titles. We flash many things. We flash it all.
Correct.
To try to now fit in, you know, or you know, climb that ladder.
Correct.
Like why?
Also, that ladder between what I would have to experience, between what Ty would have to experience, between what somebody who lacks melanin in their skin would have to experience, are all completely different. Are all completely different. However, something that Ty would have to experience versus somebody who is of the same pigmentation of her tone would have to experience would be more resembling each other than what I would have experienced.
Right.
Also, you mentioned you know, black people are fighting for equality. I personally am fighting for equity because we need reparations before we can be on the same equal plane. Like, we already are at a disadvantage. We don't start off on the same foot.
Right.
So meet the disadvantages that we have been given because of your oppression, sort that out first, and then we could talk about equality moving forward. But right now, to get us on that equal plane, we need equity.
Most definitely. Most definitely.
Reparations need to happen. For reparations to happen, white people need to start taking more action. Because, and I say white people, not to single anybody else, but you're running a show. Like, you run the entire pyramid. You run the way the system works. And if you don't find it in yourself and you want to be a part of the change, you want to be a part of the narrative, and you want to identify with your 10% that black, and if you don't try to use that to make a change, then what have you ever learned? What progress have you made? What stripes you have to say, oh, I support Black Lives Matter? If you're not actively working to cut day after day to make a physical, stamped, permanent change, it shouldn't be on our shoulders to be asking you to be humane. We shouldn't be fighting for you to just be a decent human being.
Like, and after we say it once, though, like we say it twice, we say it 3 times, we say it 1,000 times. Like, come on, like when?
They need more white people to civilize whites. They need them to civilize the savages in Cicero, who throw rocks and bricks at a peaceful and lovable black man like Dr. Martin Luther King, who would not even hurt a fly. But that's very important, because our uncles and our fathers and our older brothers died in World War I fighting Nazism to protect the Poles, and those same Poles turn around and throw rocks and bricks at us after we died to save their lives. And people talk about we are savages.
Mr. Carmichael, if you had the chance to stand up in front of the white community and say anything you desired, say to him, understand me, white man, what would you say?
I would say, understand yourself, white man, that the white man's burden should not have been preached in Africa, but it should have been preached among you. That you need now to civilize yourself. You have moved to destroy and disrupt. You have taken people away. You have broken down their systems, and you have called all that civilization. And we who have suffered at this are now saying to you, you are the killers of the dreams. You are the savages. Yes, it is you who have always been uncivilized. Civilize yourself.